Hello, hello. How's everyone tonight? All right, welcome. Welcome to the 2021 Brevard County Sheriff's Office Awards Ceremony. I'm honored and actually a little bit surprised that you asked me to come back and be your MC this year. But this special event, we're going to recognize the accomplishments of our agency members. And majority of this evening's presentation will be in video format, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. We will open this evening with a word of prayer, followed by the presentation of colors and the singing of our national anthem by Jana Perez. Will you please stand as we welcome to the stage Pastor Jason Linkus.
Well, God bless each of you this evening. Let's bow our heads and pray. Lord, you're good. We give you praise tonight. We thank you for this gathering of men and women, these heroes, Lord, in our world that you have brought here in Brevard County to take care of us. Lord, protect them as they protect us, Lord. May they have the favor of God upon their lives and everything they touch and everything that they do. Lord, I pray tonight would be a special night of remembrance and understanding of the things that, Lord, that you have put in people's hearts to do to help people. Lord, I thank you for Sheriff Ivy and his family. I thank you for their covering and the blessing upon them. Continue to bless them. Continue to bless every man and woman who wears the uniform and the families of those that wear the uniform. I thank you that tonight we give you praise because you created these people with great giftings to do the things you've called them to do. And tonight is your night. Tonight is their night. And we give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you. Please be seated. It is now my pleasure to introduce Sheriff Wayne Ivey.
Good evening, everybody, and I want to welcome Jay from the Sheriff's Office to the stage.
Thank you.
Jay's back. This is your second year, right, Jay?
Second year, yeah.
All right, so we'll see how it goes. You know, he did pretty good last year, so go ahead and give him a round of applause, and then we'll see how he does. All right, on behalf of the nearly 1,600 members of the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, I want to personally thank all of you, the family members, friends, and community leaders that have taken the time to join us tonight for our Brevard County Sheriff's Office Annual Award Ceremony. Your attendance, your support, and your love for the outstanding men and women of our agency is greatly appreciated by all of those who serve this community. As I get started tonight, I want to take a minute and thank my daughter, Jana, for her amazing rendition of our country's national anthem. So many times, out of respect for the flag, we don't get to applaud for the person that just sang one of the most important songs in our country. So, Jana, thank you. I also want to thank Brevard Pipes and Drums. They also are in that same category. They don't get the applause for all the things they do in our community. They show up, volunteer to be at everything we do. So please give them a big round of applause. And of course, I want to introduce my beautiful wife, Susan, and Junie's mom. So. I'm going to take just a quick second, and I'm looking around the room, and I see quite a few of our mayors here with us, our elected officials. Of course, my favorite mayor, Carol McCormick's here. I see Paul Alfred trying to sneak in over there. I think I saw our Palm Bay mayor walk in, Rob Medina, and just a number of people. So if you will, if you're an elected leader in our community, please stand up and let us thank you for being with us tonight. Now, normally at this point in the program, I would call out every single elected leader and recognize them. But tonight, the VIPs are the incredible men and women who would be recognized as part of our award ceremony. You see, they're the ones who put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. They're the ones who passionately protect our community, and above all else, they are the ones who we trust to protect our community, our schools, our port, and our pets. Tonight is an opportunity for us to recognize their truly impressive and often heroic actions, as tonight we will honor our agency members, our volunteers, our citizens, all who work each and every day to make our agency shine so brightly. While tonight's recipients are being recognized for their outstanding achievements, they represent only a small percentage of the amazing work that the members of the Brevard County Sheriff's Office collectively accomplish each year. As sheriff, I get to see firsthand the incredible accomplishments that our team members achieve. But tonight, it is my honor to share with you how each act of courage, determination, and passion made a difference in someone's life. Many of you have heard me say that I'm surrounded by an amazing team who do amazing things each and every day to protect our community. You've also heard me say that I'm smart enough to stay out of their way. Well, tonight, you'll get to see just how incredibly true that statement is and why I'm so proud of the men and women of our agency who truly do make us one of the most professional agencies in the country. The late Coach Jim Valvano once said, "In every single day, in every walk of life, ordinary people do extraordinary things. Ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things." Well, tonight's award recipients are dedicated, honorable, courageous, and compassionate superheroes who go to work each day with just one thing on their minds, keeping us all safe. But they're also moms and dads, sons and daughters, and friends. They are the same people we grew up next to, people we went to school with. They're our neighbors, people we go to church with, people we see in the grocery store or at the gym, and people we share a beautiful community with. Simply put, those recognized tonight are ordinary people who do extraordinary things. Over the course of the past 8 years, every new member who joins our agency and every member of our agency who has been promoted has heard a brief speech from me during their swearing in and promotional ceremonies. At the conclusion of the ceremony, I tell them I want them to do 4 things and 4 things only as a member of our team. Number 1, come to work and have fun. If you're having fun, you will be successful. And trust me, at the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, we have fun. Number 2, put bad people in jail because that's what we get paid to do. Number 3, do it more professionally than anybody else. And number 4, go home safe at the end of every shift. As you watch tonight's program, I want you to keep that thought in mind as you see just how much our members enjoy their jobs, protect our community, represent our agency, and love their families. Now, before I turn the program back over to Jay from the Sheriff's Office, I like that name for you, by the way, Jay. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I want to thank you for being here to celebrate the amazing actions of our team. Having you with us is an honor that means the world to all of us. Thank you, and enjoy tonight's program.
All right. Give him a hand. First up tonight, our Longevity Awards, recognizing distinguished service of our team members. Our employees being recognized for 25 years of service.
"25 years of service."
Corporal David Altman, Deputy Edward Beck, Deputy Harry Zazinski, Sergeant Robert Edwards, Corrections Deputy Angela Harris, Major Alex Herrera, Corporal Evan Hightower, Major Byron Keck, Major Brandon Lanza, Public Safety Telecommunicator Mary Proctor, Major Carlos Reyes, Agent Don Reynolds, Sergeant Kevin Roberts, Application Support Analyst Julie Stimmel, Deputy Rob Turner, Lieutenant Rob Vitaliano, Lieutenant Kimberly Wilson.
All right, will those mentioned please stand? Next up, our employees being recognized for 30 years of service.
"30 years of service."
Crime scene investigator Virginia Casey. Sergeant Za Cho Joe. Corporal Todd Maddox. Sergeant Angela Matthews. Deputy Brandy Torquato. Commander Andy Walters.
Will those mentioned please stand? Outstanding, awesome. Next up, our employees being recognized for 35 years of service.
35 years of service.
Records Technician 2, Mary Young.
All right, will those mentioned please stand? Thank you. Next up, 40 years of service.
40 years of service.
Commander James J.D. Donf.
Please stand. Thank you for your service. Next up is our Special Recognition Award. This employee consistently demonstrates a commitment to excellence with selfless devotion to duty and has a significant impact on the law enforcement community.
Special Recognition Award.
Since joining the Brevard County Sheriff's Office in October of 2013, Information Technology Manager Bob Urey has displayed a sincere commitment to agency customer service, excellent technical knowledge, a dedicated work ethic, as well as the leadership skills to manage multiple projects to get the job done. Under Bob's direction and innovative leadership style, the Information Technology Unit has been able to accomplish major agency upgrades and complete a host of IT-related projects which not only make our agency more efficient, but also resulted in significant financial savings to the taxpayers of Brevard County. Some of these major upgrades include implementing a suite of software which integrated dispatch, the mobile terminals for patrol deputies, corrections, and records management, installed an agency-wide digital phone system, greatly expanded Wi-Fi infrastructure, cloud storage at a remote data location to provide protection of agency users' documents and files, installation of the jail complex Guardian RFID electronic inmate documentation system, security surveillance camera installation, implementation of a multi-agency server search to allow data sharing for other law enforcement agencies, and implemented a disaster recovery site for critical IT systems. Bob has also diligently worked to expand the information technology team from 8 to 20 members in order to accommodate the ever-increasing demand for technology services. His vast knowledge and experience have also been pivotal in streamlining and protecting the agency from the never-ending threat of cybersecurity attacks. Throughout his tenure, Bob has made many significant technology improvements that have advanced the agency greatly, as well as build partnerships between the county-wide law enforcement agencies. We are proud to recognize Manager Bob Urey's dedication to the agency and to the citizens of Brevard County through this award of special recognition.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage IT Manager Bob Urey.
While Bob's coming up, I will tell you that that video did not do full justice to everything he's done to protect us from cybercrime, saving taxpayer money, which I know Commissioner Lober loves it when we do that. He's been a great asset to us ever since day one when he started, hit the ground here, putting together a great team, doing great things for us.
One more round of applause. Next up, the Lucy Ross Award. Would Frank Ross please join Sheriff Ivey on stage?
Lucy Ross Award.
The Lucy Ross Award is presented to the Sheriff's Office employee who best exemplifies the outstanding qualities and spirit of our lost family member, Sergeant Lucille Ross. Throughout her career, Lucy demonstrated an unwavering dedication to community service and excellence in her profession. Lucy was a genuinely compassionate person who never hesitated to assist others in need regardless of the situation. Her talents really became obvious when she was helping crime victims and their families. Lucy's high level of caring was probably the reason children loved her so much. This award recognizes the Sheriff's Office family member who throughout their career has best honored Lucy's memory by the consistent demonstration of these same qualities. In 1994, Marlon Buggs became a full-time deputy sheriff, and it quickly became apparent that he had a passion and drive for helping others. Early in his career, while assigned to the Community Policing Unit, he and other unit members saw a need to serve underprivileged children during the summer months and created Camp Chance, a program where kids spend a day at the Sheriff's Office Lake with law enforcement officers engaged in mentorship and camp activities. During his assignment in the Special Victims Unit, Marlon began volunteering his time as a guest speaker for the Prosecution Alternatives for Youth Diversion program sponsored by the State Attorney's Office that offers youthful offenders an alternative to being prosecuted. Marlon also volunteered with the Brevard County Weed and Seed program to implement a community-based strategy to weed out violence and drugs and seed with educational, social, and economic development throughout the Brevard County community. One such seeding program is the Project Safe Neighborhoods Annual Youth Crime Prevention Summit, where young people are given the opportunity to receive information about law enforcement, public safety, social skills, and community involvement. Marlon has been volunteering since 2006 and currently serves on the board of directors for the Alliance for Neighborhood Restoration. Marlon has also served on the board of directors for the Space Coast Marine Institute, now known as AMI Kids, which is a non-profit residential facility in Melbourne, serving youths who have committed criminal offenses. As a member of the board, Marlon provided direction on staffing and program development that assists these troubled youths to gain the needed skills to return to their families. Marlon has also been an active participant in the annual St. Baldrick's Foundation head shaving event for over 7 years, a charitable event committed to supporting the most promising research to find cures for childhood cancers. Marlon has participated or has been a team captain for the BCSO, raising over $25,000 for the charity by himself, as well as being an integral part of the team that has raised nearly $150,000. Marlon Buggs truly embodies the qualities of Lucy, and we are honored to recognize him as this year's Lucy Ross Award recipient.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our 2020 Lucy Ross Award recipient, Sergeant Marlon Buggs.
Say this before we present the plaque. When he was doing St. Baldrick's, his hair didn't look that great, so I don't know what's going on with him.
All right, one more round of applause. We will now recognize our Volunteer of the Year. This recipient has made a significant contribution to the Brevard County Sheriff's Office by strengthening the relationship with the community it serves through devotion to duty, commitment to service, and community involvement.
Volunteer of the Year.
Although the COVID-19 crisis kept many volunteers at home during 2020, Tom Niedert continued to volunteer, providing assistance to the BCSO and many other charitable groups, all while maintaining his full-time position with Brevard County Fire Rescue. Tom serves as a member of the Board of Directors for the Brevard County Public Safety Charity, which is a not-for-profit organization created to help Brevard County public safety officers and their families during difficult hardships. During 2020, Tom also coordinated the 10th annual St. Baldrick's Foundation event to raise money in an effort to conquer childhood cancers, and the Real Men Wear Pink program, which helps the American Cancer Society combat breast cancer. Additionally, Tom founded the Brevard nonprofit Caribbean Fire Rescue Benevolent Association, which coordinated equipment donations for Hurricane Dorian ravaged areas of the Bahamas. Tom helped locate, collect, and distribute equipment, including a brush truck and fire engine, an ambulance, 100 sets of fire gear, and 50 air packs to the Bahamian Islands. In 2020, Tom was also instrumental in assisting with the 5th annual Brevard County Sheriff's Office Haunted Jail Trail, which continues to be a Halloween tradition for Brevard County and Central Florida residents. This one-of-a-kind event is held over 5 nights, with all proceeds benefiting local charities. Each year, Tom brings more and more energy and enthusiasm to the Haunted Jail Trail and can be always counted on to provide many hours of hard work during the event. It is with immense pleasure that we honor Tom Niedert as the Brevard County Sheriff's Office Volunteer of the Year.
Please welcome to the stage our 2020 Volunteer of the Year, Tom Niedert.
I will tell you that whenever Tom calls my phone, I know that I'm about to have to do something in the community. It's probably going to be painful, and he's going to be a part of it because he's always rolling up his sleeves and getting things done for us. So, Tom, we are so proud of him.
Another round of applause. It is now time to recognize our Citizen of the Year.
Citizen of the Year.
The Citizen of the Year Award recognizes a member of the community who has provided outstanding service and commitment to the citizens of Brevard County and for continued support of the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. One man who long ago decided to use the adverse experiences in his own upbringing to renegotiate his purpose, one based on serving, is giving back to the disadvantaged in his community by helping them to create better futures for themselves. Motivated by the tragic and violent death of his son Brandon in 2004, Pastor Jarvis Wash, an impassioned community leader, visionary, and trusted friend, founded the Real Church with the mission of reaching, equipping, and affecting lives for Christ. Pastor Wash was born in Oakland, California. His mother and father were both involved in a life of crime, ill-equipped for the responsibilities of raising a child. This unscrupulous upbringing, marred by criminal activity, could have determined Wash's fate. Instead, he used the adverse urban experiences of Oakland to achieve his goal in helping others. His current desire is to not only help win souls for Christ, but to simultaneously assist others with positive personal growth and empowerment, such as identifying job opportunities and resources, as well as continuing education. Through the Real Church's nonprofit organization, My Community Cares Inc., Pastor Wash has led the community through a series of outreach initiatives heavily focused on crime prevention. The primary focus of My Community Cares Inc. is caring for and establishing pride within our communities. Pastor Wash has a strong passion for protecting families reducing crime, and supporting at-risk youth. His approach to community engagement has netted him a reputation for being ever vigilant. It is often stated that he not only pastors the real church, but he pastors the community as well. It is with great pleasure that we now honor Pastor Jarvis Wash as the Brevard County Sheriff's Office Citizen of the Year.
Please welcome to the stage our 2020 Citizen of the Year, Pastor Jarvis Wash.
Pastor Wash is another one that anytime he calls my phone, I know I'm about to have to do something. So he's truly not only a great friend to our community, a great friend to our agency, but man, for a long, long time, he's been a great friend to me, and I love him. Thank you, my brother. Oh, I got to say that. He said he thought he was coming here for snacks.
All right, one more time. The Merit Bar Award signifies that the recipient has displayed unusual thoroughness, determination, and initiative while carrying out their duties. This award is for distinguished service rendered in the line of duty that is significant in nature.
Merit Bar Awards.
In December 2019, Agent Thomas began an investigation into a home equity scheme where an individual had defrauded a local credit union out of over $42,000 in one day. After collecting the financial records and while reviewing surveillance footage, Agent Thomas learned that this case was part of a nationwide fraud ring that had defrauded banks with losses totaling over $1 million. Working with investigators from many states, the individual was identified and preventative information was forwarded to law enforcement and financial institutions that led to the arrest of the suspect in Jacksonville, Florida. Upon his arrest, the suspect's cell phone was seized, and using this information, Agent Thomas authored the first complete cell tower dump warrant issued in Brevard County. Using the information obtained from the warrant, Agent Thomas was able to identify other members of the organization. His investigation has led to the case being referred to the federal court system for prosecution. Agent Thomas' determination and innovation led to the arrest and prosecution of a high-level fraud network that was committing fraud throughout the United States. In May of 2020, Corporal Jose Santos, Field Training Officer William Carrion, and Deputy Paul Phillips responded to a domestic violence incident that was occurring at the Key West Bar in Satellite Beach. Upon arriving, it was learned that the suspect had struck his girlfriend several times and pushed her out of the vehicle into the parking lot before leaving the area. While speaking with the victim, the suspect aggressively entered the parking lot, driving his vehicle toward the deputies, who quickly moved out of the way to avoid being injured. Deputy Phillips, FTO Carrion, and Corporal Santos approached the vehicle and removed the suspect, who was extremely intoxicated and belligerent. The suspect was taken into custody, and during a search of the vehicle, deputies located a handgun in the back seat, as well as a semi-automatic rifle in the trunk. It was later learned that prior to returning to the area, the suspect had sent threatening text messages to the victim, which led deputies to believe that he had intended to seriously injure the victim and possibly other persons at the bar. Due to the quick response by these deputies in controlling the suspect, it is likely that a terrible tragedy may have been prevented. In April of 2019, Agent Don Reynolds began a year-long investigation into a homicide that involved several gang members from MIMS. From the outset of the investigation, the witnesses and involved persons were uncooperative and provided false information in an attempt to deter the investigation. Over the next year, Agent Reynolds conducted 68 interviews, authored multiple search warrants, and reviewed hours of video footage of the incident. This review ultimately led to the discovery of 2 cell phone videos that captured the event from 2 different perspectives. Using these videos and information obtained from the interviews, Agent Reynolds was able to positively identify 5 suspects who were involved in the homicide. Through his determination and hard work, Agent Reynolds was able to bring charges that ranged from manslaughter to tampering with evidence against the suspects. Throughout the year-long investigation, Agent Reynolds maintained direct contact with the victim's family, overcoming and ultimately gaining the respect and trust. His actions brought closure and justice to the victim's family by solving a very challenging gang-related homicide. In September of 2020, Agent Michael Thomas received federal indictments on 3 individuals who were responsible for approximately 90% of all counterfeit currency cases in Brevard County. The investigation began in 2018, and during a 3-year period, Agent Thomas meticulously tracked each counterfeiting case, completed multiple search warrants, and made arrests on each of the 3 suspects. All of his investigative effort was ultimately used to build the case against each of the individuals who were behind this large-scale criminal enterprise. Due to the thoroughness and determination of Agent Thomas, his investigation was presented to the U.S. Secret Service, who assumed the entire case, leading to the indictment where these suspects are now facing federal counterfeiting charges. In September of 2019, Deputy Adam Stewart conducted a traffic stop on a vehicle, and as he approached, noticed the driver was very nervous and learned he had recent arrests for possessing a firearm illegally and trafficking in narcotics. Deputy Stewart's canine Merle conducted a free air sniff around the vehicle and alerted to the presence of drugs. A search located a loaded firearm in the center console and a backpack containing marijuana, pills, methamphetamine, and scales. Deputy Stewart contacted the Special Investigations Unit and the Drug Enforcement Agency, learning that the suspect was a target of a federal drug investigation. Deputy Stewart began surveilling the suspect's residence, recording tag numbers, and conducting investigative stops on vehicles and persons leaving the house. In October, these efforts led to the arrest of an individual during a traffic stop where the search led to the discovery of a large amount of drugs and currency. The individual was later determined to be using a fake name because he was in the country illegally. All of this information was turned over to the DEA, who accepted the case for prosecution. These suspects were sentenced to 6 and 9 years in federal prison, along with the likely deportation of the second suspect at the completion of his prison sentence. Through his determination and thorough investigation, Deputy Stewart removed 2 known traffickers of dangerous drugs from our community. In July of 2020, Agent Don Reynolds was assigned as the lead investigator on a drug-related homicide that occurred in Vieira. The homicide victim was discovered in his vehicle in an apartment parking lot with a gunshot wound to his neck. With no initial investigative leads, Agent Reynolds used multiple resources to find any evidence that would help identify the person responsible for the murder. Over the course of 4 months, Agent Reynolds was able to develop 3 suspects in the homicide. He continued building the case, using fragments of information from interviews, cellular phone data, and ultimately recovering a cell phone video that captured a portion of the incident from the forensic evaluation of one of the suspect's phones. As the investigation culminated, Agent Reynolds obtained confessions from 2 of the 3 suspects. As a result of his investigation, all 3 suspects were indicted on the charge of first-degree felony murder. Through his efforts and determination, Agent Reynolds was able to bring closure for the victim's family through the assurance that those responsible for the death would receive the maximum punishment for their crime. In November of 2020, Deputy Joseph Grosky responded to a suspicious incident alleging that a female was possibly being held against her will in a vehicle. As a description of the vehicle was broadcast, Deputy Grosky immediately began canvassing the area and began following a vehicle that was leaving the area and matched the description. As additional deputies arrived, a traffic stop was attempted, at which time the vehicle fled, and tag information determined it was reported as stolen. Deputies pursued the vehicle from Merritt Island through Cocoa and eventually southbound on I-95. Just north of Wickham Road, stop sticks were successfully deployed, causing the suspect to flee on foot from the vehicle. Deputy Grosky engaged in a foot chase that ended with the successful apprehension of the suspect. Deputy Grosky's calm demeanor and professionalism during this law enforcement action was paramount to the successful apprehension of this dangerous suspect. During December of 2020, deputies responded to the burglary of a Florida Highway Patrol trooper's personal vehicle. Taken in the burglary were 3 firearms, multiple rounds of ammunition, as well as firearm accessories. Preliminary investigation uncovered that the burglary might be related to local gang activity. Based on this information, Game Over task force members focused efforts on tracking down these stolen guns that may have fallen into the hands of violent gang members. On December 30th, a traffic stop was conducted on a vehicle as it left the residence of a known gang member. Narcotics were located during a search, and also found in the trunk was a brown purse that contained firearm accessories that matched items taken in the burglary. Agent Keaton Malden began to interview the occupants of the vehicle and was able to gain information as to the whereabouts of the stolen property. Through the information gained by Agent Malden, family members of the suspects were contacted and 3 stolen firearms were turned over to Game Over members a short time later. Agent Malden's actions and expertise in interviewing these violent offenders led to the recovery of 3 firearms that most likely would have been used in violent crimes. His interview has also provided evidence that was instrumental in identifying the persons responsible for the burglary of the trooper's vehicle. In July 2020, Deputy Caleb Pinkham responded to disturbance where the caller advised that several persons were armed with guns. Dispatch further advised that unknown persons had robbed the victim of narcotics, and the victim was reluctant to meet with deputies. As Deputy Pinkham arrived, he observed approximately 50 people in the street. He was able to locate the victim, who was uncooperative and continuing to argue with the crowd. Deputy Pinkham also observed several persons in the crowd who were armed with firearms and heard threats being yelled at the victim. Deputy Pinkham quickly detained the victim, who was still uncooperative, in order to remove him from the area for his own protection. While placing the victim in the back seat of the patrol car, the victim suffered a seizure. With the help of additional deputies, Deputy Pinkham was able to carefully remove the victim from the vehicle and place him in the recovery position until medical personnel arrived and transported the victim to the hospital for treatment. Deputy Pinkham used tremendous discretion in handling this potentially violent situation. Additionally, he immediately recognized that the victim was in medical distress and took appropriate actions to care for him until medical personnel arrived.
Will those mentioned please stand and be recognized? Thank you for everything you do for our agency and our community. Our Life-Saving Award recognizes those employees who, under true emergency circumstances, acted to prevent the loss of life, either by exercising aid or through direct intervention.
Life-Saving Awards.
In January of 2020, Deputy Anthony Del Duca responded to a medical call where, upon entering the residence, he found a male who was not breathing. Deputy Del Duca immediately began CPR and continued for approximately 4 minutes until the arrival of paramedics. The male was transported to the hospital, where he was determined that he had suffered a massive heart attack. Due to the quick intervention of Deputy Del Duca, the male recovered from this life-threatening medical event. In January of 2020, Field Training Officer Jennings and Deputy Rice responded to a local business in reference to an unresponsive male. Upon arrival, it was determined the male was not breathing and without a pulse. Deputy Rice began CPR while FTO Jennings deployed the AED and delivered 1 shock. The paramedics arrived a short time later and took over life-saving efforts. The male was transported to the hospital where he was stabilized following the incident. The quick response of FTO Jennings and Deputy Rice directly resulted in the saving of this man's life. In February of 2020, Deputies Grosky and Dunn responded to a residence in Merritt Island in reference to an unconscious male. Upon arrival, they found the male unresponsive and not breathing. Deputies Grosky and Dunn moved the male to the floor and began CPR while also deploying an AED. A shock was delivered, however CPR was still advised. When Agent Walkington arrived on scene, he, along with Deputies Grosky and Dunn, rotated rounds of CPR for approximately 30 minutes until the arrival of paramedics. The male was transported to the hospital in serious condition, where he later made a full recovery from the medical event. Agent Walkington and Deputies Grosky and Dunn are to be commended for their outstanding life-saving efforts. In March of 2020, Deputy Greg Matthews and Deputy Roldano Rivera responded to a residence in Cape Canaveral regarding an unresponsive male. Upon arrival, they learned that the male had gone into distress while in the pool and had been submerged for a period of time before being removed from the water. Deputies Matthews and Rivera immediately began CPR and deployed an AED. Both deputies continued providing CPR until the arrival of paramedics. After the male was transported to Cape Canaveral Hospital, both deputies responded to another residence where they believed the male was vacationing and made contact with his wife. Realizing that the female was distraught and unable to drive, Deputy Matthews transported her to the hospital and introduced her to the hospital staff. Unfortunately, the male did not survive. However, due to the life-saving interventions of these deputies, family members were able to travel and be with him prior to his passing. In April 2020, Deputy Don Flamio, Deputy Joseph Snyder, and Deputy Greg Matthews responded to an apartment in Cocoa Beach regarding a male who had suffered an apparent heart attack. Deputy Flamio located the unresponsive male on a bed and moved him onto the floor using the bedsheet. Deputy Flamio began CPR as Deputy Matthews arrived on scene with his AED. A shock was delivered, after which Deputies Flamio and Matthews continued performing CPR. Deputy Snyder also arrived on scene and a rotation began, with each of the 3 deputies providing CPR to the still unresponsive male. Fire rescue began advanced life support after their arrival until the male could be safely moved from the 5th floor to the ground level, where an ambulance transported him to a local hospital. According to medical personnel, the actions of the deputies were critical in saving the life of this male. In March of 2020, Deputy Heather Bivens and Deputy William Howard responded to a medical call in West Melbourne in reference to an unresponsive female. Upon arrival, the deputies discovered that the female was not breathing and had no pulse. Deputies Bivens and Howard immediately began CPR and deployed an AED. 2 shocks were delivered to the female in between rounds of CPR until the arrival of paramedics. The female was transported to the hospital where she made a full recovery. Paramedics advised that had the deputies not immediately began CPR and deployed the AED, the female would have likely not survived this medical event. In April 2020, while off duty, Sergeant Orlando Vecchio was advised that a person had been shot in the area of Scottsmore Landings. Sergeant Vecchio located the female victim, who had suffered multiple gunshot injuries, and relayed the information to responding deputies. Corporal Jeremy Flake arrived on scene and was advised that the victim was bleeding profusely. Corporal Flake retrieved his medical bag and began assisting Sergeant Vecchio by applying a blood-clotting agent to the most serious wounds. Both deputies continued to comfort the victim, who was unable to speak but responded by squeezing Sergeant Vecchio's hand. The victim was transported to the hospital in critical condition, and according to hospital medical personnel, the actions taken by Sergeant Vecchio and Corporal Flake likely prevented the female from bleeding to death at the scene. In February of 2020, Deputy Hayden Irazari Rodriguez responded to a residence in Merritt Island in reference to an unconscious male. Upon arrival, he found the male on the kitchen floor unresponsive and not breathing. Deputy Irazari Rodriguez immediately began CPR while also deploying an AED. A shock was delivered, however CPR was still advised. While continuing CPR, he learned that the male was prescribed seizure and pain medication for a back issue. Narcan was administered with negative results of improving the male's condition. CPR was continued until the arrival of paramedics who took over life-saving efforts. The male was transported to the hospital where he was expected to make a full recovery. Deputy Irazari Rodriguez responded to this life-threatening medical emergency by providing emergency aid as he had been trained. The actions he took directly led to the saving of this male. In April of 2020, Corporal Bridget Johnson, along with deputies Tyler Burgess and Michael Lussell, responded to a call in reference to a suicidal male on the Hubert Humphrey Bridge. Deputy Burgess arrived first and met with a Cocoa PD officer who was talking with the male subject, who was despondent over losing custody of his children. Deputy Lussell also began speaking with the man and was soon joined by Deputy Burgess and Corporal Johnson. All 3 engaged the male in conversation in an attempt to get him to come down from the guardrail. Corporal Johnson was able to build a rapport with the subject, who eventually stepped down from the rail and sat down on the edge of the sidewalk, allowing deputies to take him into custody for a mental health evaluation. It is clear the male intended to commit suicide when he climbed on the railing of the bridge. The patience and compassion shown by these deputies saved his life and allowed him to receive the professional help he needed. In June of 2020, FTO Edwards and Deputy Young responded to a request from a male to check on the well-being of his uncle, who had sounded distraught during a recent phone conversation. Upon arrival at the uncle's residence, The deputies observed the male lying on the couch and appeared to be sleeping. Attempts to wake the male from outside of the house were unsuccessful, and the deputies also observed 2 open and empty pill bottles on a table by the man. Fearing for his safety, the deputies were able to enter the residence through an unlocked side door. Once inside, they found the man breathing but unresponsive. A short time later, the male stopped breathing, and FTO Edwards and Deputy Young immediately began CPR. Their efforts were successful in the male regaining a pulse. However, he still remained unresponsive. Deputies Edwards and Young remained with the male until the arrival of paramedics, where he was transported to a local hospital and made a full recovery from his suicide attempt. FTO Edwards and Deputy Young should be commended for their quick actions in preventing this suicide and allowing the male to receive the proper medical care he needed. In June of 2020, Corporal Danielle Stitt and Deputy Brian Otto responded to a residence in Merritt Island where a male was reported to be unresponsive. Upon arrival, they found the male unresponsive and wedged between his bed and the wall. They successfully removed the male and placed him onto the floor where Corporal Stitt began CPR while Deputy Otto deployed his AED. A shock was given, after which both deputies worked together performing CPR until the male regained a faint pulse and began breathing sporadically. The deputies continued with chest compression until the arrival of paramedics, and the male was transported to the hospital where he fully recovered. Quick response and life-saving measures taken by Deputies Stitt and Otto ultimately led to this male surviving this life-threatening medical event. In June of 2020, while driving in his agency vehicle, Agent Truitt heard a dispatch call from a male who collapsed while walking down the roadway. Being in the area, Agent Truitt responded to find several citizens providing CPR. Agent Truitt exited his vehicle and obtained his AED, which he deployed upon reaching the male. Deputy Neal also observed the group while driving through the area on his way home from agency orientation. Deputy Neal stopped to assist and began chest compressions along with Agent Truitt, while a citizen provided rescue breaths. The male was provided 3 shocks by the AED without success, and the group continued CPR until the arrival of paramedics. The male was transported to the hospital where he recovered from this medical emergency. The actions of Agent Truitt and Deputy Neal, along with the concerned citizens, assisted in saving the life of this male who had suffered a massive heart attack. In June of 2020, the female advised that she had received a message from her boyfriend that led her to believe he was suicidal. Corporal Willard Freeman and Deputy Angela Ittrey responded to the male's residence in an effort to check on his well-being. Upon arrival, they heard a loud noise and what sounded like a person in distress coming from a wooded area near the residence. Corporal Freeman and Deputy Ittrey began searching the heavily wooded area, finding the male, who apparently had attempted to hang himself unsuccessfully due to a branch breaking. Upon falling to the ground, the male became entangled in dense vines and panicked to the point where he had restricted his airway and was gasping for breath. Corporal Freeman climbed into the area, reaching the male, who had the vines tightly wrapped around his throat. Corporal Freeman was able to calm the male, breaking him free from the vines and ultimately saving his life. Deputy Ittrey transported the male to a mental health facility where he received appropriate follow-up treatment. The quick response and diligent search undertaken by Corporal Freeman and Deputy Ittrey were responsible for this male surviving the attempt to take his own life and enabled him to receive the mental health care he needed. In July 2020, FTO William Carrion responded to a residential fire in unincorporated Indialantic. Upon arrival, FTO Carrion found the residence fully engaged in flames. Without hesitation, he began banging on the door, making contact with the male, who he was able to safely assist out of the residence. Upon learning that the male's 90-year-old mother was still inside, FTO Carrion re-entered the burning home and began calling for the elderly female. Hearing coughing from a rear bedroom, FTO Carrion was able to locate the elderly female who was disoriented and having difficulty breathing. He quickly identified himself and assisted the female out of the residence, reuniting her safely with her son. If not for FTO Carrion's quick actions and bravery, there could have been a much different outcome, as one or both of the homeowners could have perished in the fire. In August of 2020, deputies responded to an attempted suicide at a residence in Merritt Island, where a juvenile female was threatening to harm herself. During their response, they learned that the female had shot herself in the chest. Deputies Dunn and Grosky arrived to find the juvenile sitting in a chair suffering from a through and through gunshot wound that had entered her chest and exited her back. As other deputies secured the scene, Deputies Dunn and Grosky immediately began performing life-saving measures, working together to close the wounds and stop the bleeding. They continually reassured the victim she would survive in an attempt to keep her calm. Paramedics arrived on the scene and the female was airlifted to the local hospital. It was later learned that the courageous and decisive actions taken by Deputies Dunn and Grosky ultimately resulted in saving this distraught juvenile's life. In December of 2020, Deputy Dale Craig responded to a report of a head-on collision that occurred in Miko. After arriving on scene, Deputy Craig found a female in one of the vehicles who was unresponsive and without a pulse. He immediately removed the female from her vehicle and began chest compressions, which he continued until the arrival of paramedics. By the time rescue personnel arrived on scene, the female had regained a pulse and her condition was upgraded to stable. The female was transported to the hospital where she fully recovered from her injuries. The prompt response and immediate actions taken by Deputy Dale Craig were instrumental in saving the life of this female. While traveling on Vieira Boulevard in November of 2020, FTO Gaston Robin noticed a vehicle stopped on the railroad tracks with its reverse lights illuminated. FTO Robin approached on foot and made contact with the driver, who was still seated in the vehicle. At that moment, FTO Robin also observed the train rounding the curve heading towards the vehicle. FTO Robin notified the communications center to contact FEC and advised them to stop the train. He then turned his attention to the driver, who he instructed to exit the vehicle and walk towards him. The driver complied, eventually joining FTO Robin at his patrol vehicle away from the tracks. Although the approaching train had slowed, it was unable to stop and struck the vehicle head-on before stopping approximately a quarter-mile north of the location. Further investigation determined that the driver was under the influence and had intentionally positioned the vehicle on the tracks in an attempt to commit suicide. Without the direct intervention by FTO Robin, this male would have surely lost his life when the vehicle was struck by the oncoming train. FTO Robin's calm and professional demeanor helped ensure the safety of the driver, train personnel, and the citizens who had stopped to provide assistance. In December of 2020, Deputies Adam Benke and Joe Spinelli responded to a vehicle accident in Titusville. Upon arriving at the scene, the deputies found that a vehicle had crashed into a tree and was beginning to catch fire. As Deputies Benke and Spinelli reached the vehicle, they found the driver slumped over the steering wheel and unresponsive. As the fire continued to grow, both deputies attempted to enter the vehicle to remove the driver, but were unsuccessful due to the damage to the door from the crash. Having no other option, Deputy Spinelli pulled the driver out of the vehicle through the window, and with the assistance of Deputy Benke, carried the driver to safety, moments before the entire passenger compartment was engulfed in flames. The driver soon regained consciousness and was treated by medical personnel at the scene. Both Deputy Benke and Spinelli are to be commended for performing life-saving measures and placing themselves in personal danger in order to save the life of the driver. In November of 2020, Deputy Bruce LeBeer was notified by a passerby that a male subject was lying face down on the ground. Deputy LeBeer located the male who was unresponsive, not breathing, and without a pulse. With the assistance of a citizen, Deputy LeBeer immediately began CPR. After completing several cycles, Deputy LeBeer was able to also deploy his AED, which administered a shock to the suspect. CPR was continued, during which time the male regained his pulse and began breathing. After the arrival of paramedics, the subject was transported to a local hospital where he made a full recovery. Deputy LeBeer's quick intervention with CPR and AED deployment ultimately saved this man's life.
Will those mentioned please stand? Thank you for your quick action and thinking. Our Reserve Deputy of the Year was selected from the 58 Reserve and Auxiliary Deputies currently volunteering with the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. Our Reserve and Auxiliary Deputy Sheriffs donate thousands of hours each year that benefit our agency and community.
Reserve Deputy of the Year.
Commander Ken Willis has been serving as a reserve deputy with the BCSO for more than 38 years. Even though he was working a full-time job in the corporate world, Ken felt it necessary to volunteer his time with the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. At the time he initially joined the reserve unit, the unit consisted of only a few deputies. Ken has consistently elevated through the ranks of the reserve unit, and in 2004 he was promoted to the position of commander over the whole unit. The unit had grown to almost 40 deputies when Ken took over command. At that time, the unit was donating approximately 10,000 hours of law enforcement service each year to the citizens of Brevard County. In 2012, after Sheriff Ivey took office and under Ken's guidance, the unit has grown to approximately 70 working deputies who are contributing approximately 25,000 hours of law enforcement service each year to the citizens of Brevard County. Over Ken's many years of dedicated service, he has also held several certifications, to include FTO, airboat, riverboat, and ATV operator. His skills and talents have allowed him to serve in many of the specialized units within the agency, such as the Ag Marine Unit and the Mounted Posse. He has served the citizens of Brevard County with integrity and professionalism, as shown by the numerous commendations and awards that he has received throughout his tenure. For his more than 38 years of dedicated service and leadership to the Brevard County Sheriff's Office Reserve Deputy Unit, it is our honor to recognize Commander Ken Willis as the 2020 Brevard County Sheriff's Office Reserve Deputy of the Year.
Commander Willis was unable to attend tonight, but receiving this plaque on his behalf, please welcome Lieutenant Don Franson.
So, as Jay said, Ken couldn't be with us tonight, and I hope he's watching, because what I want him to hear is that we can't wait for him to get back. He's struggling with a little bit of recovery from surgery, but I can tell you if he could walk through those doors right now, he would be here, because that's the kind of guy Ken Willis is. He has never, ever let this agency down. He has been just a dynamic piece of the success of our reserves. He is an absolute friend to anybody who's ever met him, and I just ask that everybody keep him in your prayers as he and his family work through this, and we'll get him back here next year. So Don Franson will be receiving this on his behalf.
One more time. Before we continue, I'd like to draw your attention to the right side of the stage. And welcome to our program, the Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association President, Mr. Marlon Buggs, and Representative, Mr. Al Betcher. They will be presenting a special gift to our Of the Year recipients as they exit the stage. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us tonight. At this time, we would like to recognize our communications officers of the month. These recipients were selected from the 38 communications officers who handle all emergency radio dispatch for the Brevard County Sheriff's Office and several of our local police agencies. They are the lifeblood of our agency.
Communications Officers of the Month.
As PST Sanders began her shift, she was immediately faced with dispatching deputies to an in-progress burglary. She quickly set off an alert tone and requested deputies to respond to the scene. While communicating with the aviation hangar to notify Star of the in-progress call, PST Sanders also requested another radio channel to attempt to raise a K9 unit to respond to assist. Additionally, as the incident unfolded, she communicated the owners' names and addresses for vehicles involved in the incident, as well as initiated and monitored emergency radio traffic until deputies safely cleared the scene. While working North Dispatch, Shift Supervisor Nicole Bernard received a call in reference to a traffic crash in Port St. John. After first dispatching patrol to the scene and checking on the safety of those involved, Supervisor Bernard began gathering information from the caller that would be integral in assisting in the prosecution of an impaired driver. Supervisor Bernard obtained information that was relayed to the deputies that positively identified the driver at fault and the actions that led to the crash. Using this information, the responding deputy was able to quickly recreate the events and arrest the driver for DUI and DUI with property damage. Her actions also greatly assisted in the successful prosecution of the case. After being employed by the BCSO for only 2 months, PSD Kokendorfer received a call of a burglary in progress involving 3 suspects. As deputies were responding, PSD Kokendorfer began obtaining detailed descriptions and updated locations of the suspects from the caller. Using this information, deputies were able to easily locate the suspects and take them all into custody as a result of the real-time information provided by PSD Kokendorfer. PST Fauché received a 911 call redirected from Cocoa PD where a male caller advised there was a medical emergency and needed help. By keeping the male calm, PSD Fauché soon learned that the subject had shot his wife. PSD Fauché continued conversation with the male, gaining vital background information of the events that led up to the shooting. She was able to successfully relay to responding deputies the location of the male, as well as the victim and where the firearm was now safely located. Her calm and professional demeanor kept the caller on the phone until deputies arrived on scene, keeping a potentially dangerous situation from escalating. Early in her shift, Supervisor Moore received a 911 call in reference to an armed carjacking. She was able to obtain the suspect's information and victim's vehicle description, which was broadcast to patrol deputies. Later in the shift, Supervisor Moore learned that units had spotted the vehicle and an active pursuit was in progress. While still monitoring her trainee, she was able to coordinate the activities of patrol units from multiple jurisdictions, provide continuous notifications to command staff to include that an officer-involved shooting had occurred, while still monitoring West Primary Channel for the duration of the incident. For her efficiency in handling this significant incident, she is also receiving a commendable service bar. While working dispatch, PST Trainin was advised that a stabbing had occurred and within seconds was able to update responding deputies on the victim's location. Throughout the incident, PSD Trainin handled emergency traffic, coordinated with other dispatchers, Responsive Star, K9, and Brevard Fire Rescue. Due to her ability to coordinate the quick response of multiple specialized units, the male stabbing victim received medical assistance that ultimately assisted in saving his life. PSD LeBeau received a call from a concerned citizen in reference to a suspicious male who appeared to be in distress and may have also been a special needs person. PSD LeBeau began researching prior calls in the area and was able to determine the possible identity of the male. His initiative gave the responding deputies the ability to locate the mother of the non-verbal male who was having a medical issue. The male was transported to a local hospital where he received further medical treatment. For his actions in this incident, PSD LeBeau is also receiving a commendable service bar. Supervisor Bernard received an emergency 911 call from a frantic male advising that his girlfriend had overdosed and needed immediate medical attention. While trying to calm the caller down, the call was disconnected. Although Supervisor Bernard was unable to regain contact, she narrowed the area of the caller to 2 blocks, according to where the phone was plotting. Shortly after, the male called back and PSD Herring was able to obtain the correct location of the victim. Deputies who were now in the area were able to quickly respond to the location and provide medical care until paramedics arrived. The female was transported to the hospital where she made a full recovery. PST Duke was made aware of an out-of-state caller who was advising that a user of the social media platform TikTok was making possible suicidal comments. Although only a very limited amount of information was available, PST Duke was able to locate the subject's personal page, which included a photograph. Through the photograph, the subject was positively identified, and it was learned his location was in the jurisdiction of the Hernando County Sheriff's Office. Contact was made with that agency, who was able to locate and conduct a well-being check on the male. For her diligent efforts in identifying this subject, PST Duke is also receiving a commendable service bar. PSD Burkett was working North Radio when a deputy checked out with a suspicious person at a local convenience store. Almost immediately, the deputy advised that they were pursuing the subject on foot, and the now identified subject was previously known to carry a knife. PSD Burkett assisted with a coordinated search for the subject that involved units from 2 precincts, STAR, K9, and members of the Special Investigations Unit. For over an hour, PSD Burkett assisted with the activities of all responding units until the subject was apprehended and the incident concluded. While working East Radio, PST Palumbo received a call from a male who advised that his mother had just left the residence armed with a handgun with the intent to commit suicide. While dispatching deputies to the area, PST Palumbo attempted to gain further information as to the vehicle description or a possible intended location. Upon advising the male that deputies needed to meet with him to gain further information, the male stated that he did not want to make contact and ended the call. Deputies were able to use the call location to find the male and gain the necessary information to successfully locate the woman, who was unharmed, and transport her for a mental health evaluation. PSD Samuel dispatched units to a call of a female who was assaulted and threatened by a male with a shotgun who fled the area on foot. For the next 90 minutes, PSD Samuel monitored heavy traffic while also patching countywide in order for deputies and Palm Bay officers to coordinate the search of a heavily wooded area. During the search, PST Samuel also coordinated the response of specialty units including STAR, K9, and Ag Marine. Her coordination of personnel from multiple agencies and specialties was conducted in a professional and efficient manner, allowing for seamless communication between all units.
May I please ask that all of our communications officers of the month please join Sheriff Ivy on stage. Yep, on the right side. How about a round of applause for these individuals? We will now recognize our Communications Officer of the Year.
Communications Officer of the Year.
Monica Mole joined the BCSO Communications Center in October of 2012, and during her tenure has trained many public safety telecommunicators, along with receiving numerous commendable service awards. In just 3 short years after being hired, Monica excelled and was promoted to Assistant Shift Supervisor and recently received a promotion to Shift Supervisor, where she continues to focus on training and mentoring new hires. Monica participated in multiple high-priority calls throughout the year, demonstrating her commitment to excellence during each one. In March of 2020, Monica answered a call for an armed robbery in which a vehicle was stolen by the suspect. The caller stated that they were still in shock, and Monica was able to quickly obtain vital information about the armed suspect and the victim's vehicle description. That same day, Monica led her squad as they handled emergency radio traffic during the pursuit of the same suspect vehicle with shots fired. Ultimately, the stolen vehicle was recovered and the suspect was apprehended. In May of 2020, Monica was nominated for Communications Officer of the Month for her handling of an armed domestic disturbance call in which the husband had made suicide threats the previous day and was now firing his gun inside the residence. When the husband fled in a vehicle on State Road 528 from Mare Island, Monica handled nearly all radio traffic involving deputies from both West and North precincts. She also completed a radio patch with East, primary, and county-wide radio channels. When the vehicle entered neighboring Volusia County, she continued to relay vital information from the BCSO Aviation Unit to the Volusia County Sheriff's Office dispatch for their responding deputies. As STAR continued tracking the vehicle, Monica continued documenting and relaying pertinent radio traffic. The call concluded with the vehicle and occupants being taken into custody in Edgewater, Florida. Monica Moore is considered one of the best in the business. She is committed to excellence and possesses a sincere desire for service to the citizens of Brevard and the entire law enforcement community. We are proud to recognize Monica Moore as our 2020 Communications Officer of the Year.
All right, one more round of applause for everyone. We will now recognize our Employees of the Month. Our recipients were selected from 427 civilian employees who serve in numerous capacities throughout the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. Truly our unsung heroes, they keep the machine running each and every day.
Employees of the Month.
Teresa Ravel supervises the daily preparation and serving of 3 meals a day while ensuring proper portion and specialty requirements for all inmates at the jail complex. Oftentimes, Sheriff Ivy also surprises Teresa with unique requests for special events or even for our animal friends at the shelter. Without hesitation, she researches recipes and implements a plan to get the job done. From researching recipes and producing doggy sorbet to be used at the animal shelter, to making donuts from scratch for the Milk and Donuts with the Sheriff events at local elementary schools, Teresa always goes above and beyond to serve the needs of our community. For her dedicated service, she is also being recognized with a commendable service bar. Victim advocate Peggy Brooks was contacted by a domestic violence victim after being referred by the state attorney's office. Over the next several months, Peggy assisted this victim with setting up her life away from the abuser. Peggy also asked for investigative assistance in reopening the victim's case after finding that it had been closed due to lack of evidence. By providing additional information and working with the Special Victims Unit, the case was investigated further, which ultimately led to the arrest of the suspect. For her determination in serving the needs of this victim of abuse, she is also being recognized with a merit bar. After receiving several calls regarding a suspicious person walking on the beach near Cherry Down Park in Cape Canaveral, deputies responded and made contact with an uncooperative male. The male provided deputies with different names, birth dates, and claimed he had no social security number. Deputy Bratch contacted Judicial Tech Ashley Milton for assistance and provided her with a very limited amount of information. Ashley located an active out-of-county warrant with a matching date of birth but a different name. After providing the deputy with the injunction and photograph via email, the male was positively identified and arrested for multiple charges. Judicial Tech Milton's actions displayed her personal initiative and thoroughness, and she is also receiving a commendable service bar. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was determined that fingerprinting would be temporarily discontinued at all BCSO locations. However, the need to fingerprint our vendors, contractors, and future employees was deemed essential, and Criminal Investigative Services was identified as the primary fingerprint location for our agency. During the shutdown alone, Darian Simpkins successfully fingerprinted over 100 of our vendors, contract, current, and future BCSO employees. Darian's dedication and effort assisted our agency in being able to continue its hiring process, as well as serve the citizens of Brevard County. For her service, she is also receiving a commendable service bar. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many statewide agencies began altering the way sex offender registration occurred. Some conducted registrations by telephone, while a few temporarily discontinued registrations altogether. The BCSO Sexual Offender Registration and Tracking Unit altered the process to limit the personal contact with predators and offenders, however remained open to service all registrants. From March to the end of June of 2020, Heather and Jamie successfully completed over 630 registrations while maintaining a positive and professional attitude toward their assignment. For their efforts in maintaining a close watch on these offenders, they are also both receiving a commendable service bar. While responding to Cruise Terminal 8 to provide access for construction workers, MSO Wild observed an unidentified person in one of two vehicles located in a secured area at Port Canaveral. The person he confronted was identified and later determined to be a foreign national who has been residing and working in the United States without proper authorization. An agent with the U.S. Border Patrol responded to the scene and confirmed this foreigner had been deported from the U.S. on 2 previous occasions and was currently back in this country again without authorization. MSO Wild is also being recognized with a commendable service bar for his thorough investigation in this incident. While working as an investigative analyst at the Cape Canaveral precinct, Kayla Duttenhaver realized that several law enforcement calls received within a few hours of each other may have been related. Without being asked, analyst Duttenhaver utilized her training to assist deputies with positively identifying a felony suspect who had recently traveled from the state of Ohio. Due to her efforts, analyst Duttenhaver was able to support multiple law enforcement agencies to apprehend the suspect, who without her assistance may have been able to evade capture and continue to victimize the citizens of Brevard County. For her initiative, Kayla is also receiving a commendable service bar. In August of 2020, crime scene investigator Jenna Gardner was asked to assist the Cocoa Police Department in a homicide case that occurred in their city. CSI Gardner, acting as the lead in the case, processed the residence for DNA, latent prints, and collected multiple pieces of evidence. She collected and processed a plastic bag that was located on a bed in the master bedroom. CSI Gardner was able to develop a fingerprint that was linked to the suspect in the homicide. Using her knowledge, training, and experience, CSI Gardner was able to develop the definite piece of evidence needed to charge the suspect with premeditated first-degree murder. CSI Gardner is also being recognized in this investigation with a Bar of Merit. While in the Port St. John area and actively monitoring her radio, AEO Stoneback heard a call for all available personnel to assist with the search of an at-risk missing endangered adult. The male was a diabetic, partially blind, and previously diagnosed with dementia. She obtained a description of the missing suspect from the call comments and began actively searching the area. AEO Stoneback observed a male walking along the roadway that matched the description of the missing subject. AEO Stoneback successfully located the missing adult, who was safely reunited with his family. For her efforts in bringing this incident to a safe conclusion, she is also receiving a commendable service bar. While in residence in Melbourne, AEO Friedman made contact with a female and a male who refused to sign a dangerous dog citation. Returning to his vehicle, AEO Friedman noticed there was a warrant alert in New World for that address. He was able to locate a photo of the wanted person which matched the male subject. AEO Friedman had a deputy respond, and concerned that the wanted subject would not answer the door, volunteered to approach the residence and attempt to serve the dangerous dog citation again. The wanted subject did exit the residence as planned, where he was taken into custody by the awaiting deputy. AEO Friedman is also being recognized with a commendable service bar for his assistance in capturing the wanted fugitive. In November of 2020, most of the BCSO computer systems succumbed to a software update which caused many computers to become inoperable. IT specialist Kevin Rose began to prioritize the needs of each of the computer users and began the rigorous process of completing the necessary update on nearly 100 computers at CIS. During the same time period, the Sexual Offender Registration and Tracking Unit moved the registration responsibilities for all sexual predators offenders from CIS to the jail complex. Additionally, the Career Criminal Offenders Felony Registration responsibilities were also transitioned from the Records Unit at Parkway. Specialist Rose was instrumental in the transition of all computer-related needs from both locations to the jail complex. For his efforts in these projects, he is also receiving a commendable service bar. While reviewing an inmate visit, Inmate Information Clerk McPeak was alerted to a possible law violation when she reviewed the inmate's paperwork and determined that the visitor may also be the victim in a criminal case. McPeak immediately notified Criminal Investigative Services, who initiated an investigation and determined that the visitor was in fact the victim of this inmate. Further review found that the inmate was employing other inmates within his cell block to call his victim, which had been done a total of 33 times. Miss McPeak's attention to detail was a key factor in stopping the efforts of this inmate's continuing violations of a no-contact order.
Will our employees of the month please join Sheriff Ivey on stage? One more round of applause, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now recognize our Employee of the Year.
Employee of the Year.
Victims of domestic violence can feel lost and confused, having many times endured years of emotional and physical injury from their abusers. Domestic violence advocates provide a service that assists and guides the victim to resources that can allow them to gain the courage to break away from their abuser and once again become self-sufficient. Our Employee of the Year is being recognized for not only her assistance to a victim of abuse, but also her tenacity in making sure that justice was gained for the victim. Her determination to have investigators reopen a closed case led to the development of new evidence needed to successfully prosecute this violent offender. During November of 2019, victim advocate Peggy Brooks was contacted by a domestic violence victim who was referred by the state attorney's office. Over the next several months, Peggy would assist this victim through multiple injunction hearings and counsel the victim as she was continually terrorized by the suspect with acts of criminal mischief, disconnection of utilities, and threats of violence. All of these acts were accomplished with the suspect leaving no evidence in any one of the incidents to be charged. Peggy assisted the victim by helping her with setting up a life away from the abuser and providing unending support as she went through the recovery process. Peggy also asked for investigative assistance in reopening the victim's case after finding that it had been closed due to lack of evidence. By providing additional information and working with the Special Victims Unit, the case was investigated further, which ultimately led to the arrest of the suspect for domestic violence strangulation, false imprisonment, and tampering with a witness. For her commitment and tenacity that allowed this victim to free herself from this abusive relationship, we are proud to recognize Peggy Brooks as our 2020 Employee of the Year.
All right, one more time. We will now recognize our Corrections Deputies of the Month. These recipients were selected from the 298 corrections deputies who serve in the Brevard County Jail Complex. Our corrections deputies work with some of the most dangerous criminals in our country and must remain vigilant and alert at all times. They are one of the reasons we sleep safe in our homes at night.
Corrections Deputies of the Month.
Deputy Strange was alerted to 2 inmates in the medical dorm who appeared to be having seizures. Corporal Landis, along with Deputy Concordia and Sergeants Halfide and LaRoche, responded to assist. Both inmates did not have a pulse, and Corporal Landis operated the AED while the remaining officers performed CPR and rescue breaths on both inmates. As a result of performing these life-saving measures for several minutes, a pulse was regained on both inmates. After the arrival of Brevard County Fire Rescue, Narcan was administered and both inmates were transported to the hospital where they made a full recovery. In addition, these correctional deputies are each receiving a life-saving award for their quick intervention and teamwork. Corporal Mike Nettles was assigned to in-custody inmate security at Holmes Regional Medical Center. During a 3-week period, the inmate divulged information of his involvement in multiple violent crimes in another county in Florida. Corporal Nettles kept detailed notes of the conversations that referenced 2 homicides, a robbery of an elderly woman, and a false imprisonment. Corporal Nettles forwarded this information to investigators with the Green Acres Police Department and Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, where these events took place. Corporal Nettles testified in the trials of the inmate in Palm Beach County. His testimony and the meticulous notes that he had taken were instrumental in the conviction of this inmate for these horrific crimes. Due to the efforts of Corporal Nettles, a very violent career criminal will be serving the rest of his life in prison. Corporal Nettles is also being recognized with a Bar of Merit. While conducting a security check in the maximum security area of the jail complex, FTO Anderson located a shank in the shower. Corporal Johnson immediately called for a complete lockdown, and a thorough search of all 16 cells and 30 inmates was conducted. During the search, with the assistance of Corrections Deputy Hamilton and Concordia, additional contraband was located and seized. Due to their diligence, these corrections deputies were able to remove dangerous contraband from the facility, helping to ensure the safety and security of the inmates and officers. They each have received a commendable service bar for their actions. As Corrections Deputy Smith approached an inmate who refused to return to his cell, the inmate lunged forward, knocking him to the ground. The inmate continued to advance and stood over Smith with closed fists. Corrections Deputy Smith was able to use his legs to keep the inmate at a distance, allowing him to deploy his taser. The inmate was able to separate the wire from the taser and charge Smith again. Smith deployed his second taser cartridge and chemical agent, at which time the inmate became compliant. Corrections Deputy Smith is also being recognized for his quick response with a Bar of Merit. While assigned to 500 Delta Pod in the jail complex, Corrections Deputy Ardley McCree witnessed a group of inmates passing a crumpled piece of paper to each other. After retrieving the paper, he found it contained 2 clear plastic bags with a gray and white powdery substance, which were later identified as heroin and fentanyl. Due to Corrections Deputy McCree's attention to detail, harmful narcotics were removed from the jail complex. Field Training Officer John Cabrera investigated a disturbance involving multiple inmates and located a weapon consisting of 2 pieces of metal, each approximately 2 inches in length, that appeared to be made from hinge pins. With the assistance of another corrections deputy, an area search was conducted that led to the discovery of a similar item in a box truck delivering food. Continuing their investigation, they were able to positively identify where the metal pieces came from and also the 2 inmates involved in attempting to introduce contraband into the facility. For his actions, FTO Cabrera is also receiving a commendable service bar. Lieutenant Kimberly Wilson was notified of a possible overdose of an inmate in the medical unit and began an investigation to determine how this inmate could have obtained the drugs, since she was housed alone. Camera footage, housing logs, and arrest affidavits were reviewed to compile the information needed to determine the source of the drugs. Lieutenant Wilson successfully located the inmate responsible for introducing the drugs into the jail population. Based on her investigation, a search was successful in recovering the drugs, and the inmate received additional criminal charges. Lieutenant Wilson also received a commendable service bar for her investigative work in this incident. While off-duty, Corporal Michael Oldham noticed a verbal altercation that turned into a physical altercation between a male and a female in the parking lot of Walmart. He quickly intervened and separated the involved parties while advising an employee to contact law enforcement. While awaiting their arrival, Corporal Oldham witnessed drug paraphernalia fall from a backpack of one of the subjects. Corporal Oldham provided a statement to arriving officers that assisted them in charging the subject. Corporal Oldham intervened in this incident using an approach that assured the safety of all parties while using his observation to assist local law enforcement in the furtherance of a criminal case. For his actions, he is also receiving a commendable service bar. While off-duty, Corrections Deputy Sean Roblin was traveling on State Road 528 when he observed a male subject walking alongside the roadway. He recalled reading a law enforcement bulletin in reference to a missing endangered person and was able to recall the subject's physical and clothing description. Corrections Deputy Roblin confirmed the subject matched the description on the bulletin and made contact with the male. The subject had been reported missing from a local hospital and was still wearing a medical bracelet from the facility. Corrections Deputy Roblin's attention to detail assisted in returning this person to the medical facility to receive the medical treatment he needed. For his actions, he is also being recognized with a commendable service bar. While off-duty and driving, Corrections Deputy Nathaniel Elliott witnessed an altercation between a male and female inside a vehicle. He took position behind the vehicle while contacting the Palm Bay Police Department. Corrections Deputy Elliott updated dispatch as the vehicle entered a parking lot where he witnessed the ongoing altercation between the male and the female. Based on his information, the occupants were intercepted by the Palm Bay Police Department as they left the hotel parking lot. The male occupant was arrested on charges of domestic battery by strangulation, false imprisonment, and driving under the influence. Corrections Deputy Elliott remained calm and focused and provided the necessary information that led to the apprehension of this individual. Corporal Darren Duval was conducting a security confinement check when he was alerted to an emergency in cell 320. As he approached the cell, he observed an inmate lying on the floor with what appeared to be a torn sheet wrapped around his neck. Corporal Duval immediately called FTO Price and Jenkins for assistance. He entered the cell and attempted to remove the sheet from around the inmate's neck. However, the inmate was still conscious and resisted Corporal Duval's efforts by pulling the sheet tighter around his neck. With the assistance of Price and Jenkins, the three corrections deputies were able to get the inmate under control and remove the sheet. Their quick actions and teamwork helped avert a potentially life-ending event. For their actions, they are also receiving a commendable service bar. The Haunted Jail Trail is a one-of-a-kind event held over 2 weekends and provides a family-friendly night of fun while benefiting local charities. Director Noel Remillard and Corrections Deputy Raymond Short spent countless hours preparing the Haunted Jail Trail, building multiple structures which made the event possible. They also spent many hours working during the event to ensure that the volunteers had everything necessary to make the event a success. Their contribution continued after the event was over as they worked for days ensuring that all the props and structures were properly disassembled and stored for future use. For their efforts in this important community event, they are also being recognized with a commendable service bar.
Will our Corrections Deputies of the Month please join Sheriff Ivey on stage? One more round of recognition for this group. We will now recognize our Corrections Deputy of the Year.
Corrections Deputy of the Year.
Corrections Corporal Michael Nettles exemplified the tenets of professionalism, dedication, and teamwork by his actions and testimony, which were instrumental in the conviction of a Palm Beach County man for 2 brutal murders in Green Acres, Florida. Corporal Nettles was assigned to provide hospital security for inmate Zachary Penna for a 3-week period while he was incarcerated at a local hospital. During this time, inmate Penna began initiating conversations with Corporal Nettles, who used his interpersonal skills to build a rapport with the inmate. Inmate Penna willingly began divulging specific details of his crimes by providing the locations and his motives to Corporal Nettles. The details inmate Penna provided were so heinous in nature, Corporal Nettles began to meticulously document the information. Inmate Penna disclosed specific details about 2 homicides, a felony battery, the robbery of an elderly woman, and a false imprisonment case which had been under investigation by the Green Acres Police Department in Palm Beach County, Florida. At the conclusion of his hospital stay, Corporal Nettles submitted an in-depth case report regarding the information provided by inmate Penna to the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, the Green Acres Police Department, and the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office. On December the 17th of 2019, Corporal Nettles testified in Palm Beach County about the confessions inmate Penna had provided during his hospital stay. With clarity, Corporal Nettles relayed to the jury the specific descriptions and accounts to which only the perpetrator would have had knowledge. As later expressed by the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office, Corporal Nettles' notes were the greatest contributing factor to inmate Penna receiving convictions for his crimes. Corporal Nettles displayed the highest level of professionalism, dedication, and commitment to bringing an extremely violent and dangerous criminal to justice. He was instrumental in the conviction of inmate Penna, who received 2 life sentences for these heinous crimes. Corporal Nettles' actions ensured the victims' families received the closure they deserve, and we are proud to name him our 2020 Corrections Deputy of the Year.
All right, one more time. We will now recognize our 2020 Deputies of the Month. Our Deputies of the Month were selected from 535 deputy sheriffs who proudly serve in patrol, canine, marine, investigations, aviation, civil, district and school security, and court services.
Deputies of the Month.
In November of 2019, a 19-year-old female was found deceased in her bed by her mother, which an autopsy later revealed was a result of strangulation. Agent Urbanitz was assigned to the investigation, determining that during the time frame the death occurred, the victim and her brother were alone at the residence. Agent Urbanitz spent countless hours interviewing witnesses, writing multiple search warrants, reviewing cell tower information, and coordinating forensic testing of the small amounts of evidence collected at the scene. Agent Urbanitz narrowed the suspect pool to the victim's brother and compiled an entire homicide investigation based almost entirely on circumstantial evidence. During the course of the investigation, Agent Urbanitz was faced with a grieving family that was torn apart by the loss of possibly 2 of their children. According to family members, his compassion and empathy for the family helped bring them closer together and provided closure to an act of violence that ultimately took 2 children away. For his professional investigation in this case, he is also receiving a Bar of Merit. Deputy Bruce LeBeer responded to the scene of a traffic crash involving a motorcycle, and upon arrival found the male motorcycle rider had suffered an amputation of his right lower leg. Deputy LeBeer immediately utilized his agency-issued tourniquet to the upper area of the leg, which prevented further blood loss. The male was transported by helicopter to Health First Trauma Center, where he was stabilized. The trauma physician confirmed that the proper usage of the tourniquet by Deputy LeBeer saved this man's life by preventing the male from bleeding to death at the scene. For his actions that led to this man's recovery, Deputy LeBeer is receiving a life-saving award. Several hours after an armed carjacking in the county jurisdiction of Cocoa was reported, the vehicle was located by the BCSO Aviation Unit in Rockledge. Aviation began surveilling the vehicle, providing updates to patrol units on the direction of travel. As the vehicle traveled east on State Road 520, the vehicle was successfully disabled, causing the suspect to abandon the vehicle in front of a convenience store. As the suspect ran into the store parking lot, Sergeant Chris Ferrante and Corporal Gary Haas arrived on scene. During the foot pursuit that ensued, Corporal Haas observed a firearm in the hands of the suspect and announced on the radio that the suspect was armed. the suspect was observed attempting to force his way into the vehicles that were stopped at the intersection. Fearing for the safety of the citizens, Sergeant Ferrante and Corporal Haas ran to positions that would enable them to address the suspect. Sergeant Ferrante used a break in the flow of traffic to discharge his firearm, striking the suspect and eliminating the potential for further violence. The actions of Sergeant Ferrante and Corporal Haas resulted in the incapacitation of the suspect and stopped an armed felon who could have killed or caused serious injury to innocent victims. They are both being recognized with a bar of merit. Deputy Don Flamio responded to a residential fire in Cape Canaveral and, being the first to arrive on scene, learned that the elderly homeowner, who was also handicapped, was still inside a bedroom of the burning residence. Due to the thick smoke, Deputy Flamio broke a window and gained entry into the house. Using his flashlight, he was able to crawl through the residence, eventually locating the male, who he was able to drag to the window and remove from the house with the assistance of arriving deputies. After rescuing the male, Deputy Flamio stayed in the residence and also successfully located the man's dog and brought him outside also. Both the elderly male and his dog were treated by Cape Canaveral Fire Rescue. If it were not for the heroic actions and determination of Deputy Flamio in putting his own life at risk, both the homeowner and his dog may have perished in the fire. For his actions in this incident, Deputy Flamio is receiving a life-saving award. Agent Wendy Wheeler was assigned the investigation into an attempted homicide of a female who was shot multiple times at Scottsmore Landings. In reviewing surveillance video captured from a local residence, Agent Reggie Hammond was able to identify a suspect vehicle in the shooting. Over the next several weeks, Agent Hammond began to search the US 1 corridor from North Brevard to South Volusia County, gathering surveillance videos in hopes of determining the direction of travel for the suspect prior to and after the shooting. Agent Wheeler coordinated the efforts of investigators and analysts from multiple counties. Those efforts would result in the positive identification of both the vehicle and the suspect. The suspect and vehicle were located by the Nassau County Sheriff's Office at a local hotel. Agent Wheeler responded and the vehicle was secured for processing and a suspect interviewed. Multiple search warrants were authored and the male was ultimately arrested and charged with the shooting and attempted homicide of the victim. Due to the outstanding work and tireless efforts of Agent Wheeler and Agent Hammond, this armed and dangerous suspect was arrested before he could commit any further violent acts against the public. For their determination in bringing justice for this victim, they are both receiving a bar of merit. FTO Jason Lewis responded to a residence in Cocoa for a well-being check on a male who was possibly suicidal. Upon arrival, FTO Lewis observed the male on the screen porch with a revolver against his head. As a perimeter was being established, FTO Lewis used his car as cover and began to engage the male in conversation. After approximately 15 minutes, FTO Lewis convinced the male to put the gun down and exit the porch. As FTO Lewis approached, the male abruptly changed his mind and began moving toward the gun. FTO Lewis entered the porch and tackled the male, preventing him from reaching the gun. The male was taken into custody and transported to a mental health facility for treatment. Upon further investigation, FTO Lewis learned that the male was also a convicted felon and registered sex offender. FTO Lewis authored a search warrant for the residence and during that search uncovered another firearm and ammunition. FTO Lewis obtained an arrest warrant for possession of a firearm by a convicted felon that was served on the male upon his release from treatment. For his investigation into this offender, FTO Lewis is also receiving a bar of merit. Agent Carmen Minthorn responded to a residence in Satellite Beach in reference to a sexual battery investigation. During initial contact, the victim was very reluctant to assist due to the sensitive nature of the crime. When Agent Minthorn expressed the importance of preventing the suspect from victimizing others in the community, the victim overcame this reluctance. Having only the first name of the suspect, Agent Minthorn worked tirelessly for several months to identify the suspect. Through the use of cell phone and DNA search warrants, incorporated with statements from both witnesses and the suspect, Agent Minthorn developed probable cause and arrested the suspect. After the arrest, the state attorney declined prosecution. However, undeterred, Agent Minthorn continued to gather evidence and identify witnesses which refuted the suspect's alibi. The state attorney ultimately filed charges of kidnapping and attempted sexual battery against the suspect. For her determination in serving the victim in this case, Agent Minthorn is being recognized with a Bar of Merit. Agent Chris Caparizzo received an anonymous telephone call from a person who advised they had information in reference to a suspect threatening to harm a corrections deputy. The reportee advised that this suspect wanted the caller to find a person to assist them in burglarizing the home of this corrections deputy, and in order to enable the suspect to harm the intended target. Agent Caparizzo conducted a series of controlled phone calls that led to an undercover officer meeting the suspect to make arrangements to carry out the intended crime. During this meeting, the suspect advised the undercover officer of the assistance needed, the name of the target and where they lived, as well as their desire to kill the corrections deputy. Based on this meeting, an arrest warrant was completed, and the suspect was arrested for solicitation to commit first-degree murder. Agent Caparizzo conducted a thorough and immediate investigation that required the coordination of multiple units that led to the arrest of a suspect who fully intended to take the life of a member of this agency. For his efforts, Agent Caparizzo is receiving a Bar of Merit. East Precinct deputies developed probable cause to arrest a domestic violence suspect in Merritt Island. As Deputy Justin Kirk was responding to the location, he observed the suspect in a vehicle which fled as he attempted a traffic stop. Deputies at the scene were able to provide Deputy Kirk with a possible location of where the suspect may be found. As Deputy Kirk arrived at that address, the suspect quickly retreated into the garage upon seeing him. Deputy Kirk followed the suspect into the garage, who now reached into his waistband and produced a knife, holding it toward the deputy in a threatening manner. The suspect then fled into the residence and once inside, armed himself with a second knife, which he used to cut both his wrists. While speaking calmly to the suspect, Deputy Kirk approached him to provide first aid while still maintaining officer safety. As the suspect tried to lurch past Deputy Kirk in an attempt to reach another knife, Deputy Kirk pinned him against the doorframe for several minutes until additional units arrived and assisted in taking the suspect into custody. Deputy Kirk's performance in this incident displayed confidence, determination, and calmness, with his actions ultimately allowing him to take the suspect into custody without sustaining further injury. For his actions, he is also receiving a Bar of Merit. Agents Tim Liston and Josh Ellison began an investigation targeting street-level sales of heroin and fentanyl in the central Brevard area. Using the assistance of confidential informants, these agents were able to identify members of an organization that was affiliated with gang-related activity, as well as trafficking substantial amounts of heroin and fentanyl. The investigation culminated with the issuance of arrest warrants for 44 individuals, as well as multiple search warrants. During the execution of these warrants, agents seized 8 firearms, $55,000 in U.S. currency, and trafficking amounts of heroin, fentanyl, and cocaine. The efforts of agents Liston and Ellison dismantled a high-level drug organization and removed dangerous controlled substances from the streets of Brevard County. For their investigation into this narcotics operation, they are also being recognized with a Bar of Merit. Deputies responded to a residence in Titusville in reference to a subject who had a firearm and was making suicidal threats. As deputies set up a perimeter, Deputy Joe Spinelli obtained the subject's phone number and began attempting to make contact with the distraught male. Over the course of 90 minutes, Deputy Spinelli made over 40 phone calls, eventually establishing a line of communication where he was able to build a rapport with the subject. Deputy Spinelli was able to convince the subject that he would get the help he needed and to end the incident peacefully without anyone being hurt. The subject ultimately exited the residence, where he was taken into custody and transported to a mental health facility. This very volatile situation ended without injury to the subject, and for his actions, Deputy Spinelli is also receiving a Bar of Merit. Deputy Alexander Vila responded to a traffic accident on Interstate 95, and upon arrival found a female victim who was trapped inside her vehicle, bleeding profusely due to the amputation of her left arm. Deputy Vila immediately utilized a tourniquet and applied it to the upper part of her arm to prevent further blood loss. Brevard County Fire Rescue arrived on scene, extricated the female, and transported her to the hospital, where she received further medical care. The actions of Deputy Vila during this extreme emergency were directly responsible for saving this female's life. Deputy Villa is also being recognized with a life-saving award.
Will our Deputies of the Month please join Sheriff Ivy on stage? One more time for this group. As you heard earlier in the video presentation, Deputy Bruce LeBaire's actions saved the lives of 2 men. I'm happy to say that in the audience with us tonight, we would like to recognize Sergeant Major Robert Voltaschek and Mr. Raphael Mariani. Sergeant Major Voltaschek is taking a break from his rehabilitation at Walter Reed Medical Center in Maryland to attend our ceremony tonight, and Mr. Mariani has made a full recovery. If not for Deputy LeBaire's actions, the outcome may have been different for these 2 gentlemen. Will Sergeant Major Wojtaszek and Mr. Mariani please stand up and be recognized? Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to recognize our 2020 Deputy of the Year.
Deputy of the Year.
In March of 2020, West Precinct deputies responded to an armed carjacking in the county jurisdiction of Cocoa. A description of the vehicle and suspect were broadcast, which led to the vehicle being observed at a local convenience store several hours later. As the deputy approached, the driver exited the store and refused commands to stop, fleeing in the vehicle at a high rate of speed. The same vehicle was observed on multiple occasions, and the BCSO Aviation Unit was able to get into position to surveil the vehicle. The vehicle traveled through the city of Rockledge and Cocoa until traveling east on State Road 520 toward Merritt Island. As the vehicle cleared the Hubert Humphrey Bridge, Deputy Matthew Rush was able to deploy stop sticks, successfully striking both drivers' side tires. The suspect continued driving until abandoning the vehicle in front of a convenience store located at State Road 520 and North Tropical Trail. As the suspect ran into the store parking lot, Sergeant Chris Ferrante arrived on scene and was able to position his agency SUV to block the suspect's avenue of escape. The suspect entered a vehicle that was parked at the gas pumps. However, seeing his route to escape was blocked, again took flight on foot toward the intersection. As the suspect was fleeing, Corporal Gary Haas observed a firearm in the suspect's hands and announced on the radio that the suspect was armed. The suspect began running up to cars that were stopped in the intersection, attempting to force his way into the vehicles, with Sergeant Ferrante and Corporal Haas pursuing on foot. Knowing that the suspect was armed and fearing for the safety of the citizens stopped at the traffic light, Sergeant Ferrante was able to take a position that would enable him to address and neutralize the imminent threat to the community. Sergeant Ferrante used a break in the flow of traffic and his position of advantage to discharge his firearm, striking the suspect and eliminating the potential for further violence. The actions of Sergeant Ferrante resulted in the incapacitation of the suspect and stopped an armed felon who could have killed or caused serious injury to innocent victims. We are proud to name Sergeant Chris Ferrante as our 2020 Deputy of the Year.
All right, one more time. Well, it's been a wonderful night of recognition and honor. Congratulations again to all our award recipients and their families. There's no greater award than those presented by your peers, and I'm truly honored to be part of such a wonderful organization. One more standing ovation for all of our awards received tonight.
Jay, I got it from here, buddy.
Sounds good.
All right. So we said at the beginning we'd give him a round of applause, see how he did. I mean, I'm going to give him like a B minus. But Jay does a lot for us. You see him not only up here on stage with me, but you see him at all the different events with me, Haunted Jail Trail, dancing. He's in so many of our public service announcements. And he just does a great job for us, always willing to give his time and his talent. So big round of applause for Jay from the Sheriff's Office. Wow, what a night. Sun Tzu once said, "A man with outward courage dares to die. A man with inner courage dares to live." Well, tonight you had the opportunity to see just how prevalent inner courage is among the men and women of our agency. Tonight you saw just a glimpse of what I get to see every day. I get the honor of seeing. It's amazing to watch what this team does. It's amazing to see the strength of this agency and the amazing level of passion our members have for serving others. My wife and a lot of others often ask me if I have any other clothes in my closet. Apparently, I wear my uniform all the time. You know, they ask me that question thinking that it hurts me, but it doesn't. Because what they really should ask me is why I wear my uniform all the time. It's because I'm proud to be a part of this agency. It's because I'm honored and I am humbled to wear the same uniform as the courageous men and women you saw tonight on this stage. And while my wife jokes with me and threatens to make me pajamas that look like this, which I think would be pretty cool, by the way, I wear this uniform all the time because being a part of this agency is the most incredible accomplishment of my 40-plus year career. It's because there's not a single piece of clothing in my closet that I would rather put on than this uniform. It's an honor to wear the same uniform as the men and women you saw on this stage tonight. Throughout my entire career, I've loved every job that I've had, and I consider myself truly blessed to have served with several great agencies. But to serve with this agency is to serve with the finest professionals in the world. This is an amazing agency, and each member of it makes it what it is today, and also what it will be in the future. Sometimes when agency heads talk about their agencies, I hear them talk about support teams or support roles within their agencies. Each time, I cringe because there are no support teams or roles in our agency, as each member and their assignment are absolutely vital to the success of our overall mission, protecting our citizens. If you take just one single element, one single component of this agency out, it doesn't function the same, and we would not be so successful. So tonight, regardless if you were on stage, you were here to celebrate a team member's success, or were unable to attend because you were out on duty, fulfilling your obligation of protecting our community, I want you to know that I'm extremely proud of you and for all you do. And I want you to know that I love each and every one of you. As I said, I'm humbled to be around you. Now, before we leave this beautiful facility tonight, I would like to extend a special thanks to each and every award recipient and their families. Pastor Jason Linkus for our invocation, and all the wonderful staff here at Church at Viera for helping make tonight such a success. Our honor guard for our flag ceremony, Brevard County Pipes and Drums, and our daughter Jana for singing our country's national anthem. I'd also like to thank our award committee members, headed by Chief DeMorat and Commander Singleton, for their time and dedication in making sure so many deserving award recipients were recognized. And of course, Gene Palmer for keeping them straight. And I know it's quite a task. A huge thank you to the many volunteers who helped with tonight's reception and presentation. Manager Ron Spangler and his team who worked so hard to engrave the beautiful plaques. Our crime scene unit for for taking all the pictures of the ceremony, and all of the family and friends who joined us here tonight. I'd also like to thank Marlon, Al Betcher from the PBA. Thank you guys for all you do to support our agency and to recognize our Of the Years. Your support is greatly appreciated. I'd be deeply remiss if I didn't personally thank Giles, Tom, and the entire Space Coast Daily team for their continued support and devotion to recognize those who dedicate themselves to making Brevard County such a wonderful place to live, to work, and a place to raise our families. Tonight's video presentation was a dynamic, fitting tribute to our agency and its members. Thank you, Space Coast Daily. You guys are always a huge part of our success. We greatly appreciate your partnership. As a reminder, if you didn't get a chance to come upstairs and take pictures with your plaques and awards, you can meet me in the lobby right afterwards, and they have the backdrop set up there. As we close, I want to invite Chaplain Roger Alexander to come up. I also want to thank our citizens for allowing us to serve in this community and for their incredible support of our agency. In Brevard County, we are loved and protected by our citizens who keep us each and every day in their thoughts and prayers. Without question, having the support and love of our community is the greatest gift we could ever ask for. So on behalf of our entire agency, to our entire community, thank you. Chaplain, if you'll close us out in a word of prayer.
Well, I don't know about you, but when I look at what we saw here this evening, I just see a bunch of miracles. And I just want to let you know that what I see is God has certain characteristics, and I see those same characteristics in the law enforcement people that I get the pleasure of serving with. And so if you'd bow your heads and join me in prayer. Lord, you are a God of order, and Lord, you empower the law enforcement. Your word says that you choose each and every one of them, and you do empower them with the authority to perform and protect the people that you have placed under them. So Lord, we ask you to continually be with all the law enforcement agencies in Brevard County. Lord, guide and protect them. Give them the grace, the peace, the mercy, and the wisdom to perform their duties on a daily basis. Lord, we ask you to give peace to their families as they're out working, Lord. Let them know that you are with their loved ones